Welcome to the Visa Halftime Report. Visa, everywhere you want to be.
Hey guys, welcome to the Visa Halftime Report. These words let me take it back with you. Once again, hope you guys are having an amazing Christmas Eve right now. And if not, happy Hanukkah, happy Kwanzaa. And for this report, we're going to do a little bit of a historical one. There's a map that from the Virginia River Express that illustrates the history of how Virginia used to be a long time ago. So the tracks in Virginia River Express around today used to host all kinds of important rail service, and there's a subway style map that they made told the history of some of Virginia's railways in 1921. The trains that use these tracks, both Virginia Express and local, there are branches that are as far out as Warrenton and beyond Fredericksburg, like something here is from Quantico. You got something all the way to not Frederick. You got a line going to Charlottesville all the way down there. You can say to Louisville, Kentucky, and Atlanta. You may take other trains that can go there in a certain period of time. And so currently this is where the blue line runs from Franconia. That's where the blue line stops, but it can continue on the Virginia Railroad Express back then. And further down, the blue line goes to Richmond. And the map's triple lines in Potomac, Fredericksburg, and Piedmont, which is the PF and P line. Was acronym was sometimes jokingly said to mean poor folks and preachers. The PF&P was a vital link to DC from a very poor part of Virginia, and the gray line from Union Station is the WB&A, an interurban train that linked DC to Annapolis and Baltimore. Maps in 1921 only showed geography, making service details nearly invisible, and times and locations were only available on arcane timetables that railroad employees had to interpret. So basically, you have to, read off a schedule. But the genius of a subway style map is how it combines service information with geography, both of which riders need to get from point A to point B. Also, while surrounding geography is important, focusing on the rails themselves is the best way to illustrate the service they once had. And this is part of a bigger project of the map in 1921. Railroads from the entire DC and Baltimore region. It's a sequel to Map 1 made of the San Francisco Bay Area Railroad in 1937. So, I know this is kind of small, you can't really see it, but there's a lot more here in San Francisco Bay, in the Bay Area. I can't really see well, I can't even zoom in on anything here. So, you can't really get much information from this map. And even just the southern lines from DC complete, it's easy to see how history of the region's railroads informs contemporary planning. And for example, in 2015, VRE announced it may extend service from the Manassas line to Haymarket, reactivating a bitter branch once extended out beyond Front Royal. And what are the other times you might want to start using again? Leave a comment down below, guys, if you want to reenact or revive a section of VRE. But now you may be thinking, what the heck is going on with the WMAT's budget? It's not yet a decision, but yet right now a call to action. So currently, up to 68 DC area bus routes could face cuts in 2020, and some could see increases under a draft budget document presented to the board earlier on that Thursday. And at the meeting, various board members then proposed numerous of amendments, and the board ultimately put off any action for a month. So what's going on, and what should riders take from this? So it's very important to understand a few key things here, which relate to the very complex and arcane process by which WTA determines its budget. One, there are many proposals in there. So first of all, the bus cut proposals revealed last week come on top of a longer list of possible changes that people have heard in early November. And here are some things that could change under the proposals so far from General Manager Paul Wiedefeld. So what he did propose was restore some late night rail hours, staying open a half hour later Sunday through Thursday, and an hour later on Friday and Saturday. But trains run less often in the early morning hours, and you get often free transfers between trains and buses. Let's say like a train, like certain section of a line goes down, you get free transfers from a train to a bus. If you're on the same line, It's a long base time issue, and you can raise the base rail fare from 10 cents to 15 cents for all trips, and raise the maximum fare for the long trips $1, and offer a $2 flat rail fare on weekends, and no change to bus fares, increasing weekend frequencies on rail and a number of bus lines, and charge people more for using cash on the bus. And I have very skeptical wisdom of this. And this will be a fight between DC, Maryland, Virginia, and it's less about WMATA. To reach a budget, Virginia, Maryland, and DC have come to an agreement. It's board members who are in those jurisdictions who ultimately decide, and to get there, they will argue ferociously. And in fact, they did last week. After all, it's those three jurisdictions who pay the bills and their board members to have the final say. It's not just a political game. There are real differences of opinion here. And the maximum fare is essentially rising more than the base fare under Wakefeld's proposal. Sorry about that, a little bit, guys. Lower base fares are good for people who live in the walkable places where they ride transit, not just to commute, but for many other everyday trips. That's most common in the central jurisdictions in DC, Arlington, and Alexandria. And lower max fares are best for people who commute the long distances from the end of the lines, which are more than just suburban areas. And I mean much more. And DC was pushing hardest to restore late night hours, and Virginia jurisdictions raised concerns about free transfers because the transfers between the local bus systems wouldn't become free, or to do so would cost more. And some jurisdiction governments honestly are more worried about equity for low-income bus riders than others. So all of this means a big fight, and they started to see this with some of the proposals at the board meeting, such as a proposal from Maryland's Michael Goldman to add $1 surcharge for rides at the Dulles Silverline station, and to push more of the fare increase onto the short distance riders. And Virginia members suggested a higher bus pass cost, which would then include free rides on a local non-metro bus. And there's a 3% cap that is still constraining choices. And this year, DC, Maryland, and Virginia approved a historic funding deal to provide money for Metro's capital needs, like repairs and more 8-car trains. As a part of that, Virginia in particular required, and Maryland echoed, that the amount that jurisdictions pay for WMATA's operating budget can never grow more than 3%, except big new expansions like the Silver Line opening. In many years, even the cost of doing everything the same has risen more than 3%. So sometimes WMATA will have to cut just to stand still, or even if not, doing one thing like restoring late night service can force cuts or fare hikes elsewhere. And this means, like it or not, the budget will be sort of a puzzle where various pieces that cost money, like late night service, free transfers, and more frequent rail service, or on the weekend that is, will be battling against the various cuts or fare hikes. And in past years, budget fights convincing jurisdictions to come up with more money has often been a part of the solution and something riders organize around. Now, that's mostly not possible. And individual jurisdictions can choose to pay for non-regional buses outside the cap if they want. And there's still a lot we don't even know. A massive list of 68 efficiencies and restructuring, 12 bus lifeline service adjustments, 4 Metro extra improvements, and 18 weekend service improvements is a little hard to get one's head around. And the bus cuts proposal claimed that for some trips at least, there are or would be alternate bus lines. And there can be times when simplifying the bus service, like turning into infrequent bus lines a block apart into one single more frequent line, could be a positive. And on the other hand, actually reducing total service is not an improvement, but it's important to better understand what exactly is in the proposal. The transportation staff at the various local governments have asked Metro to explain more about the possible cuts. To really understand and evaluate them, we'll need maps and more explanation of alternatives and more. And because of the way WMATA budget works, if anything might be cut, it has to be approved for public hearing by the board, then go to formal hearings. That means, in a sense, that before the agency develops clear materials to explain the proposals, assuming it does it all, it has to present things to the board. And present to the board hasn't gone to the agenda, which means it suddenly appears on the website the Monday before Thursday meeting, where the press naturally sees it and writes about it. It's a weird system, but there doesn't seem to be an obvious alternative. Certainly, having the board hear about things in secret would not be better. And one other thing people should do is pay attention and get involved. So the budget could ultimately yield a lot of costs to cuts to buses and fare hikes, or maybe less so. The ideas of restoring late night service or offering free bus rail transfers are still not for sure. Whether low-income riders will have to pay for an extra quarter to ride the bus is not decided, and Virginia board members will be arguing what they think is in Virginia's best interest. Maryland members from Maryland and DC for DC. But not all riders or taxpayers in those places are the same, as which people interests the board members listen to is not set. Already, the riders have been speaking up about the proposed bus cuts, and board members' concerns led to the board of holding off approving public hearings at Thursday's meeting. A revised proposal will come back to the board in January, followed by hearings and adoption in March. And there's sure to be a lot more fireworks to the hearings, especially at upcoming board meetings. So we're going to pay attention to this process slowly, and keeping with the growing focus for us at Fox and everyone else, we're going to be pushing to better understand and speak up for the equity. Not speaking up really, we'll be we'll be sharing with you guys the equity implications of these proposals. And too often, the needs of lower income residents and riders of color have not been heard enough by WMATA board members and the Department of Transportation who advise them. And we want to make you guys to know that the board should make this a prominent factor in the deliberations. So yeah, a lot of complicated things here in this process, and hope the WTA's budget will shape out in the near future. So thank you guys so much for watching or listening to this halftime. We'll see you guys back in the end here, maybe the second half, right here.